The wind at night cut through the city like a blade, turning breath into smoke and sidewalks into rivers of ice, and no one noticed the woman curled beneath the flickering street lamp except a little girl wrapped in a designer wool coat worth more than the stranger's entire life savings. 8-year-old Elena Carrington, the only daughter of tech billionaire Victor Carrington, had just stepped out of a glossy black car after a charity gala her father hosted at the most luxurious hotel downtown. The event had been filled with crystal chandeliers, polished speeches, and promises about changing the world, but as Elena waited for her father's driver to open the umbrella, her bright blue eyes drifted past the velvet ropes and flashing cameras to something real, a homeless woman shivering violently against a brick wall. The woman's hands were red and cracked from the cold, her thin sweater no match for the brutal winter night. People walked by pretending not to see her. Some glanced with discomfort. Others simply looked through her as if she were invisible. Elena felt something twist in her chest. Without asking permission, without caring about the expensive shoes on her feet, she slipped away from the car and walked toward the woman. "Are you cold?" she asked softly, her voice small but steady. The woman looked up slowly, startled, embarrassed, and tried to force a smile. "I'll be all right," she whispered, though her trembling betrayed the lie. Elena didn't hesitate. She removed her own thick coat, the one her father had proudly bought her that afternoon, and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. Then she reached into the small paper bag she had insisted on taking from the gala buffet and pulled out a warm container of pasta she had saved because she wasn't very hungry. Steam still rose from it in the freezing air. She placed it gently in the woman's shaking hands. "It's still warm," Elena said. "Please eat." For a moment, the city noise faded. The woman's eyes filled with tears, not from the cold but from the unfamiliar warmth of kindness. Across the street, Victor Carrington had stepped out of the hotel just in time to witness everything. At first, his jaw tightened. His daughter, heir to a billion-dollar empire, standing on a dirty sidewalk, coatless, feeding a homeless stranger. Security shifted nervously, unsure whether to intervene. The media photographers nearby began snapping pictures. Victor's reputation was built on precision, control, and image. He built companies, bought politicians' time, and negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions without blinking. Yet in that moment, watching his small daughter kneel on cold concrete to adjust the coat around the woman's shoulders, something cracked inside him. Elena looked up and saw her father watching. For a second, fear flickered across her face, as though she had done something wrong. Victor walked toward them slowly. The cameras zoomed in. Everyone expected him to scold her, to pull her away, to protect the family image. Instead, he did something no one anticipated. He removed his own tailored overcoat, a coat worth thousands, and placed it over both his daughter and the homeless woman, shielding them from the wind. Then he knelt down. A billionaire on his knees in the snow. Gasps echoed around them. "What is your name?" he asked the woman gently. "Margaret," she replied, her voice fragile. Victor nodded. "Margaret, no one should freeze on my streets." That sentence alone stunned his security team. My streets. Not the cities. Not the government's. His. He turned to his assistant and said words that would trend worldwide within hours. "Call the board. Cancel tomorrow's meetings. We're launching it tonight." Within 24 hours, Victor Carrington announced the Carrington Winter Initiative, a privately funded project converting 3 of his unused commercial properties into fully equipped transitional housing centers for homeless women and children. Not temporary shelters with folding chairs and thin blankets, but dignified apartments with heat, medical care, job training, childcare, and counseling services. Reporters called it a PR stunt. Critics said it was a tax strategy. But when they asked Victor what inspired the sudden move, he didn't mention branding, politics, or profit margins. He simply said, "My daughter reminded me what leadership actually looks like." What shocked everyone even more was his next decision. Instead of cutting a ribbon and stepping away, Victor personally committed to funding the program long-term and restructuring part of his company's annual profits into a permanent social impact division. Investors panicked. Stock analysts predicted losses. Yet the opposite happened. Consumers rallied behind the company. Employees felt proud. Applications to work for Carrington Tech tripled. But none of that mattered to Elena. A week later, she visited the first housing center and ran straight into Margaret, now clean, warm, and smiling in fresh clothes provided by the program. Margaret knelt and hugged the little girl who had changed her life with a plate of pasta and a coat. "You saved me," Margaret whispered. Elena shook her head innocently. "No. You were just cold." That simple perspective shifted an empire. Victor watched from a distance, realizing that all his billions had never once taught him the lesson his 8-year-old daughter understood naturally, that real power isn't proven in boardrooms but in moments when no one expects kindness. The footage of that freezing night continued to circulate online, not because of the wealth involved, but because people saw something rare, compassion that wasn't staged. And as the story spread, donations poured in from strangers inspired by a child's courage. Shelters across the country received support. Other CEOs followed suit. One small act had created a ripple no strategy meeting could have engineered. So if this story moved you, if you believe kindness can still shock the world, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because we share powerful stories that remind us what truly matters. Sometimes, the biggest changes begin with the smallest hearts.